You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
We have an aging population taking more medications than ever before. On this podcast, I will interview experts in geriatric medicine to gain insight so we can provide optimal care to patients in their golden years. I'm your host, Dr. Tamara Ruggles, and this is the Geriatric Pharmacy Focus. Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Geriatric Pharmacy Focus. With me today is Dr. Deborah Melito, a board-certified geriatric pharmacist and a fellow of the American Society of Consultant Pharmacists. She is the Director of Clinical Services and Consultant Services for Diamond Pharmacy Services, and she's also the Chief Antibiotic Stewardship Officer. And we've had her on the podcast before on antimicrobial stewardship, back when it was called the LTC Pharmacy Podcast, and we did an episode on antimicrobial stewardship. But today is going to be really fun because Dr. Melito is one of the past presidents of the American Society of Consultant Pharmacists. And we recently had our annual meeting in California in November, I believe it was. Gosh, October or November. I can't even remember now. But I wanted to have Dr. Melito with me today just to talk about what it's like to be a past president, how she was involved. And then we're also going to get into how she's a champion for the age-friendly movement. So, Dr. Melito, welcome to the podcast today.
Oh, thank you, Tamara. It's wonderful to be invited. I've listened to several of your podcasts. You always do such a good job. So thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that. So you're past president of the American Society of Consultant Pharmacists. And so I'm always curious, there's not many people who can say they've been president of a professional organization like that. So how did you get involved with ASCP? And then what just inspired you to run for president?
Okay, well, that's a little bit of a story. I'll try to keep it brief. But, I've always felt that wherever I was in the pharmacy profession, it was important to be part of a bigger group. And I always tell my students that, pick an organization and, join it because you'll hear more about what's going on, whether it be at the local, regional, or national level, that you may not necessarily know about if you weren't a member of that organization. So I worked in a hospital setting for several years, and I belonged to the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. And I got a lot out of that. I was very involved at the local level and the regional level. And so then when I went to Diamond Pharmacy Services in Indiana, Pennsylvania, and I became the director of the clinical and consultant services for our long-term care division, the owner of my company, Gibbs Owner, said, why don't you come to an ASCP meeting with me? And so I went with him. And I liked what I saw, what I heard. I met some wonderful people. And I guess the starting point was to join a committee. And so the committee that I joined was the antimicrobial stewardship. I think it was called like a task force or something like that. And it was very interesting to me. And the next year, the person that had been the chair said, I think you could be the chair of this committee. And I said, Nancy, I don't think I'm ready for that. She goes, oh, you're ready. And so I became the chair of that committee. And then I, started to hear about what other committees were doing. I got a little more involved with the DEA committee, the Government Affairs Committee, which is called GAC. Just learning more and more about the organization. And so someone had suggested that maybe I join the board. Well, I was nominated and I ran and I didn't win. But I went back to the drawing board and I got more involved by meeting more people and becoming more involved in some different committees. And I ran again for the board and I was the lucky candidate. So the board terms for ASCP are 3 years. So I was I was in the middle of my second term on the board, and someone thought that I should run for president. So the way it works is, you get nominated, and if you win, you're the president elect for a year. Then you become the president for a year. Then you're the chair of the board for a year. So I didn't win first time around. But, I just kept meeting more people and, staying involved. And I ran a second time and I was elected. And I became the 52nd president of ASCP. And it's probably been one of the most professionally gratifying things that I've done. I can say that there are some very hard things that I've done in my pharmacy career. One was going back to school to get my doctorate while I had two small children, was married, working full time. I don't know how I did it, but it was the best thing I ever did. And then the second hardest thing was operationalizing the COVID vaccines. When everyone said, we can't do this, I said, no, we are going to do this. And so we ended up immunizing thousands of residents in our nursing homes. So those were the hardest things, but the most gratifying thing professionally was serving the 3-year term at ASCP.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that you ran and you didn't win the first time, because that is what happened to me this go round at ASCP. I ran for the board of directors and didn't win. So it was encouraging to hear that you just kept trucking along and then ran again and won. But what are some of, the lessons you learned during your time as president?
So I had the opportunity to go to every region of ASCP. We have 8 regions. I personally belong to the Mid-Atlantic region since I live close to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But I was able, because we had a grant, to speak on immunizations. And so it was wonderful that I got to go to each region. And I've always said something that was a goal of mine, that whatever meeting I went to, before I left, I would at least talk to everybody in the room, whether it was hello, my name is, or sit down and talk to a group of people. It was really important to me that I know as many people that were members of ASCP as possible. And when I did that, people tended to tell me things that I know would not have happened if it would have been via a Zoom call, or maybe not happen at all, because they're like, it's probably not that important. But it was important to me when I heard it. So I think that I was able to bring back very valuable information about what the members wanted and what they were observing, and if they had some suggestions. So I always took those to heart and brought them back to the board meetings.
Yeah, and the thing about you, Deborah, is that you're such a good leader and you're such a good listener that it's easy to talk to you. So I could see how people would open up to you and tell you what they would like to see, and that you would listen and bring that back. It's a true quality of a leader, which is why you were such an amazing president. Do you have any favorite memories as president?
Well, I think it's the people that I've met along the way. These people just aren't my colleagues, they're my friends. And I've had such adventures. No matter which region I go to, I can think about some things that we've done, some different places that we've gone, or some dinners that we've gone to. So most recently in San Diego, I'm an Aquarian. My birthday's in February. And I need to see the water, taste the water, feel the water. So I said to a couple of my friends, I'm getting in, the night before I have to be at a board meeting. I really need to see the ocean. And so they arranged to make that happen. So I thought that was great, the people I've met along the way.
Yeah. And with your involvement, in pharmacy as president, what where do you see the future of pharmacy going with AI and robots? And there's so much discussion about, is the pharmacist going to become obsolete or more clinical, or where do you see their role going as pharmacist?
Well, I think that since we're talking about senior care, let's face it, we've never had so many people over the age of 65, than we've ever had in America. So I think it's 10,000 people a day are turning 65 and older. And so I think that if you were a pharmacy student or somebody that was thinking about going into pharmacy, we have to start talking to you early on about how to best take care of the older adult. And I may be a little biased, being so involved with ASCP, but I really think the care of the older adult is where it's at. Because no matter where we would work, whether it be in community or in a university, in a hospital, in a nursing home, no matter what, we're all taking care of older adults. So I think that we all need to be very good at that. And so if we can use AI to help us to do that, I'm all for it. I think being involved in advocacy for the profession itself is very important. ASCP has something called a fly-in every year. And I never realized how much I liked that aspect of pharmacy until I started to go to the fly-ins. And you get to meet with, the House of Representatives, Congress, the Senate. It's enlightening. And you really feel like your voice is being heard. You always have like an agenda that you follow. And I would strongly encourage, anybody that's listening to consider, going to a fly-in if you're involved with ASCP or even other organizations have scheduled fly-ins that they do.
Yeah, that's definitely on my bucket list of things I would like to do. It seems really neat to go just advocate for our profession and show a lot of people don't know what pharmacists do. So I think it's important to also just show people what we do and how important we are as part of the healthcare team. And speaking of older adults, you are the Mid Atlantic champion for ASCP for the age friendly movement. So tell us about that age friendly movement.
So that came to be via a grant that ASCP received through the John A. Hartford Foundation. And it was a sizable grant. And what it stated was that we were charged with having 2,500 pharmacists become credentialed in age friendly so that you could get like a micro badge if you completed the learning modules. And then beyond that, we need to get, I think it's 250 pharmacies as age friendly. And then we can also have long-term care facilities become age friendly. So this age friendly movement started in hospitals a couple years ago, and to the point where it's probably going to become a quality measure for hospitals in 2026. I'm not sure if it's going to be the first quarter or not, but we all know that, the quality measures that hit hospitals will eventually, maybe in 10 years, hit long-term care. But I think we have to pay attention to this. But it's all centered around 4 M's. The first M is what matters most to the resident and those that care for them. The second one is where pharmacists play a very large role, and that's medications. And that's where we would be looking to make sure that there aren't any interactions, looking at the anticholinergic burden, the Beers criteria, all things that we do now, but now there's a name for it. And then there's mentation, that's the third M, where we're making sure that our residents are free of or screened for dementia, delirium, and depression. And then the final one would be mobility. And that's where I think pharmacists can play a role in looking at, doing falls assessments where needed and really getting PT and OT involved. So it's really like if you're looking at this from a long-term care perspective in a nursing home, you could see where you could get all those disciplines around the same table while they're doing a care plan to make sure that they're saying this new admission, what what matters most to Mrs. Smith? Well, the family member might say, a good day rest, make her breakfast, and go play bingo. Like being very specific, which shouldn't be new to us because we know that the CMS mega rule stated we need patient specific care, right? So this is not a new concept. It's just putting a lot of different things together for the age-friendly movement to take place. And so, yes, I was asked to be one of the Mid-Atlantic champions of ASCP, for the age-friendly movement. And so we're charged with, enrolling pharmacists, pharmacies, and long-term care facilities into the system.
And I would think, like specifically long-term care facilities, boy, you'd think all of them would want to be recognized as age-friendly because that's who they're taking care of predominantly is our older adults. But when I look at the 4Ms, pharmacists can be a huge component to all of the M's because medications do affect mobility and they do affect mentation. And medication decisions should be centered around, what matters to the patient. And that was an area that I didn't stress enough at first was what matters most because as a pharmacist you can look at a medication list and say, oh, that's highly anticholinergic, that needs to go, or that can cause hypoglycemia, we should change that. And you can kind of just look at the medications and not the whole person. So I love what matters most because when you sit and talk with a patient about their medications, you hear stories. And there was one patient in particular where I really thought they should switch antidepressants because they were on a tricyclic antidepressant and it was highly anticholinergic. And the patient said, I don't care what medication you change, but don't change that one because I went through a very hard time in my life and that medication made a huge difference and I never want to be without it. So, here I am thinking, oh, it's highly anticholinergic, it should go. And here's the patient saying, no, that medication matters to me. I don't want that one to go. So that discussion is a big deal. It's very important when you look at optimizing medications.
And Tamara, if I could just add something that, you said, wouldn't you think that every long-term care facility would want to do this? Yes, you would think that. But some people will say, we can't possibly do one more thing. So we need to break it down into smaller bits. And so the recommendation really is when you're, introducing this at a long-term care facility or wherever you're introducing it is let's start with one resident, just one. And if we become proficient and everything seems to be okay with that, then maybe we go to 5, or maybe we do a unit. So we don't ever want to overwhelm any facility because they really do have a lot to do. And so we just really have to break it down into chunks. And there's a very nice workbook that accompanies this movement that it's page by page. And if you follow that, it's not so overwhelming.
I love that. One day I was overwhelmed at work and my coworker said, how do you eat an elephant? And I'm like, what are you talking about? she said, one bite at a time. So, and then she ended up giving me a little stuffed elephant that I have at my desk at work. But yes, I think when we look at, gosh, becoming age friendly as a whole, maybe it is overwhelming, but I love that you brought up how there is a lot to be done in our long-term care facilities, and they do have, sometimes staffing issues and a large workload. So breaking it down into bites or usable steps is a great idea. So how can we incorporate, as pharmacists, how can we incorporate the 4Ms just into our daily practice?
Well, I think that we are already doing it. I just think we need to bring in other professionals that we work with and educate them about what we're doing and how they can help. So I know that PT in the different facilities, I think they're wonderful, with what they do with the residents. But if you're, sitting there consulting perhaps in the nursing unit and they're sitting next to you, you can, strike up a conversation with them. Social workers are really important in this process. And I really like to see them at the table and them understanding what we're trying to do, because they pretty much do some of that work already. Like I said, with the care plan, when someone's admitted or whenever there's a change of condition, I think anytime that you can talk about it as a group is helpful. And speaking about it at a quality assurance performance improvement meeting like QAPI on a quarterly basis, always having it on your agenda is also very useful, because you never know. There might be somebody new to the group, or someone hears something a little bit differently and they're like, you know what, I want to hear more about that. I've actually had management groups hear about the age-friendly movement and ask me if I could, sit down and talk with them, because they want to introduce it to all of their facilities. So that's always good when that happens. So any chance that I'm getting to speak in front of a group about the age-friendly movement, I'm taking advantage of. So I've got a few presentations coming up in February for different groups. One's a pharmacist group and one is a nursing group. So, the presentations will be a little bit different, but not totally. A lot of the concepts would be the same, no matter with whom you're speaking.
Yeah, and you can almost incorporate the 4Ms into any type of presentation or education session that you're giving, which is nice. That can always be a slide on there, is incorporating the 4Ms into antibiotic stewardship or, whatever it might be.
Well, actually, there are some pharmaceutical companies that are incorporating 4Ms into specific medications. And there are some disease states that are incorporating it into their guidelines. So it's wherever we are taking care of older adults, whatever way we're talking about it, we should be including it.
Yeah.
So whether we're writing, something on psychotropic stewardship or, as you said, antimicrobial stewardship, the 4Ms could be incorporated.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. The diabetes standards of care in diabetes 2026 guidelines were just published in December, and the 4Ms are in the section 13 of older adults in the diabetes guidelines too. So I love it. It's really becoming more and more prominent in guidelines, and people are talking about it more. And then the best part about it is it takes care of the whole person, where you're not just looking at one thing, you're looking at the whole person, which is what we want to do in healthcare. So if pharmacists want to get that age-friendly badge, or if facilities want to become age-friendly, what are steps they can take to get to that direction?
So for pharmacists, if you go to the ASCP website, into the Learning Resource Center, you can see the 4 modules. There's specific ones like What Matters Most module, medications, mentation, and mobility. You complete those, and then there's a little survey that you take, and then you can get your badge. And what we've done at my pharmacy is we've added age-friendly pharmacists to any pharmacist that completed all of that, and they could show me their badge. So that's right in their email signature. We also recommend that you use that in your LinkedIn profile. So those are some ways of being recognized. As far as the facility goes, there is a workbook that is phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is where you pretty much go page by page and complete the requirements, and they're very well thought out. They're easy to follow. And then once you demonstrate that you have that concept understood, then you can apply for phase 2, which is when a facility can then say they're an age-friendly facility. They can market it, they can put banners up, things like that. So they have to show competency through finishing phase 1 to become official at phase 2.
Fantastic. And I will say, as for the pharmacist side of things, it's not a ton of work to get the badge, and you'll learn a lot. It's fairly easy modules, but it's great stuff to know. And then you can, put your age-friendly banner on your LinkedIn profile or whatever profile to help market yourself as an age-friendly pharmacist. And it's free, correct?
It is free, yeah.
So even if you're not a member of ASCP, you can go get that badge and market yourself and learn quite a bit along the way.
Yeah, it's all good. It's very positive.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts today, Deborah, on being an age-friendly pharmacist or anything pharmacy related for that matter?
Oh, wow. Well, I think that as long as you have the desire to keep learning, then great. Keep doing what you're doing. I say that to my students all the time. Like, pharmacy's never been boring to me. There's either been a new medication, a new indication, a new guideline, and to me that's so exciting. I just think that there's still a lot more for even myself to learn. So just keep taking the CE and going to conferences and belonging to a professional organization.
Yeah, love it. I agree. It's never been boring to me either. And it's so fun when new guidelines or information comes out and you can geek out on it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like when the new I think it was the CMS mega rule. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's 833 pages, but here we go.
Yep. Here we go. And that's when we didn't have Chat GPT to summarize it for us.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here. And everyone, head over to ASCP and get your age-friendly pharmacist badge.